Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Eventide patron-only stream. This one on a Wednesday. Yeah, well, it's the end of the year. And as I run out of days, I started to realize, you know what? I should probably make sure I have one more stream before the end of the year. Yesterday was a continuation of holiday festivities, so I wasn't able to stream. And last week I had a conflicting schedule on Tuesday, so it's been a bit tough here these past couple weeks. So I decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and do a Wednesday stream. It's special, it's weird, but we're going to do it anyway. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday night patrons-only stream. Since it is the end of the year, I fear this would be a good time to talk about where we're at, how the year went, what went well, what didn't go well, and then, kind of talk about how that's going to carry forward into the future and what 2024 looks like, and just kind of give you all a sense of where I'm at and where things are going, and kind of what challenges are still out there, which ones are now kind of resolved, and how we're going to get through it all. So, for those of you watching live, welcome. For those of you who watch this in recap, stay tuned. We're gonna go through everything. First of all, 2023 has been a bit of a roller coaster, and not just for me, right? For the entire industry. Coming into this year, I had high hopes of getting, the player's guide done and getting the GM's guide done and, just having all this stuff done and completed. And here on the other side of it, we got a couple things done, but we didn't hit any of those lofty goals. And we didn't, I didn't, not we. It's not your fault. I didn't hit any of those lofty goals because, frankly, life decided to throw half a dozen curveballs my way that made, frankly, my free time far less free. And also forced me to retool a number of things that I'd already been working on. So, to start off, things that went kind of well. There was a lot of playtesting of Wolfram's Fate that happened this year. Not as much as I would like, but a lot did happen. Those groups, the playtesting has wound down now for the year and will pick back up early next year with one of my groups, but I'll kind of get to that. So we got a whole bunch of playtesting done on the adventure. That was kind of the thing we started off doing, and that rolled relatively well in the early parts of the year. But frankly, the OGL debacle happened in January, and that already started pulling attention and drawing things away. Now, there were a bunch of things that were already in flight at that point, right? Wolfram's Fate Part 1 was deep into editing and going into layout, and eventually got uploaded to drive-thru, and then, I made POD version, print-proof versions, and it went live on May 26th. So it's been up for about 7 months now. And I'll be frank with all of you. I have sold precisely, as of this morning, 99 copies. That's pretty slow. That's slower than I need for it to be successful as a commercial product. But I'm not, to be clear, I'm not measuring it on those lines. If I did, I'd be like, well, we gave it a shot and it didn't really go anywhere. But I'm not. Because it's a module and the world guide and world setting stuff isn't even out yet. So it's kind of a slow burn, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay by me. But as of right now, we are at 99 copies sold, which is one copy short of the next metal tier. So drive-thru does this thing where it's like your products get a metal tier based on how many they sell. And there's one at 50, one at 100. Boy, I want to look it up now. So, the metal tiers. Copper is 50. Silver is 100, so it's one copy away from silver. Electrum is 250, and gold is 500. Platinum's 1,000, Mithril's 2,000, and Adamantine's 5,000. Now, Minotaur Games has been my side business on there for a long time. I have one gold product. That means I have one product that sold 500 copies. It doesn't count things that get given away for free or things that are free projects. Those don't get medals. So I have one gold. And I do not have a ton of silver. I mean, actually, you know what? I have a fair number of silver. But I don't have very many electrums at all. I've got a handful. And 1 gold. So Wolfram's Fate being on the cusp of silver is actually not a terrible thing. For what I've done there historically, it's not too bad. Would I like it to be better? Yeah, of course. But until there are other parts out and people can see a roadmap and people can get player's guide and stuff like that, I don't really expect it to go anywhere. What's the gold? The gold is the Hopefinder Survivor's Guide. The Narrator's Guide is Electrum and is almost gold. But the Narrator's Guide has sold a handful less copies. But yeah, no. So Hopefinder Survivor's Guide is my only gold product on there, which is not a bad thing, right? Talking about how Hopefinder went this year, is a whole nother kettle of fish. Because frankly, it had a fantastic year. But it's a complete game, right? So it's kind of where the challenge is, right? Eventide is having a little bit of a slow roll just because it's not done. It's in progress. So I guess I'm not really surprised that it is where it is. But that wasn't the only thing we had come out this year. The Orc version, I released a Gloamling earlier in the year. I don't remember the exact date where I dropped the Gloamling PDF. But I released an Orc version on November 28th. And that kind of speaks to the big challenge that I'm having right now, is that I had a lot of content, especially a lot of content that is player-facing, that needs a fine-tooth comb to go through it all. That is kind of what I'm doing right now. It's slow work. It's meticulous work where I go through and make sure that I am removing OGL content. And frankly, changing things to make sure all of my content is compliant with the new Orc standard of the game, the remaster version of Pathfinder. And honestly, one of the biggest challenges of that is that I wasn't able to do any of it until the books were released, because I have to maintain kind of a professional separation between my day job at Paizo and what I do for Minotaur Games. I can't use my knowledge from my day job to get the edge on people in the third-party market with Orc stuff. I can't do that. That would be a conflict of interest, and frankly, it's below my professional standards of kind of ethics. I don't think there's, as long as I didn't release it till the day after the books dropped, I don't think I would be breaching my contract. But for me, it's kind of dirty pool. And I'm not casting aspersions on anyone who has done this in the past or may do so in the future. But for me personally, I really didn't start transitioning Eventide to Orc Standard until after the remaster books came out. I just couldn't do it in good faith. So there's that. So we got a lot of playtesting done. Part 1 of Wolfram's Fate is done. It's out in the wild. I have not made an Orc version of that yet, but that is on my to-do list. The Part 2 is basically done. Or rather, the text for it is basically done. I need to have it edited still. And I'll talk about 2024 here in a minute. But Part 2 is basically done. There's a few checks and last-minute things I want to do. And then Part 3's in deep writing and playtesting. So the adventure is coming together slowly because I've decided to kind of be meticulous in my playtesting. But it is coming together. Now, at the same time, the player's guide is, principal writing on that is done, but it needs a pass. It needs to be revised. And that's fine. I'm also using this as a chance to kind of tighten up the work, go through and revisit some things that I know aren't quite working the right way and fix them up and patch them up. So there is that. But yeah, all of that had to wait until the remaster version of the books actually dropped. And they didn't drop, until October. Was it October? November? It's October. No, it's November. I don't remember now. I'm confused. I got the books a long time ago, but that's not the same time the public got them. So that's kind of the things we've accomplished this year. We've also ordered a bunch of art. Like, I have a whole bunch of stuff sitting and waiting. Like, I have the cover for part 2. I have most of the interior art for part 2. Yeah, it was November. And I've started to collect up art notes and stuff for part 3. So there has been a good deal of work that has happened this year for a project that is frankly my side, hobby. So that's kind of the good of 2023, but we should probably also take a minute to talk about the bad of 2023. First of all, obviously the OGL crisis. Starting the year with WotC basically saying, yeah, the OGL is dead, and you can't use it anymore. Frankly, I mean, there's the industry effects, which Paizo and me as a part of Paizo, pushed and decided to go with a new license, and the challenges and difficulties that brought caused a lot of third-party publishers to just pause their work or find other venues or stuff. But for Eventide, it just basically meant that I had to suddenly slow roll everything. I had to kind of go, how much work do I want to put into this when I know half of this stuff is going to change? I have to be judicious with my time. And fortunately, I was, about to do the Hope Finder crowdfunding campaign, because that project was basically done, and running the crowdfunder is kind of the easy part in the grand scheme of things, compared to making it. I decided to focus my efforts on that because that was pretty safe anyway. It was already kind of not really OGL dependent. And if I needed to pull the OGL from it, I mean, I probably could have. So, as far as setbacks go, having a massive industry-wide kind of panic attack certainly hurt quite a bit. This also led to me having some disruptions in my playtesting schedule and things like that, which eventually caused one of my playtest groups to dissolve. So, going from 2 playtest groups to 1 playtest group has actually been pretty challenging and frankly kind of demoralizing. As a GM, you hate it when a group falls apart. It's nothing you ever want to have happen. But, it happens. Life gets in the way, folks drift in different directions, and folks lose interest in a thing, or frankly just grow frustrated with it to the point that they just kind of check out. And it sucks that happened. I'm still trying to kind of pick up the pieces on that front in a few places. I doubt it'll mean that any playtest group comes out of it, but I'm trying to at least get to game with some of those folks again. So, that was a big challenge. And then obviously the other elephant in the room on this year's, in terms of setbacks, is just, deciding, frankly, to move. And, doing a extensive house hunt, traveling back and forth between Seattle and Portland, and then finally scheduling and arranging the move. So, I'll be honest, this time last year, it hadn't started yet. The move and the challenges therein has been entirely on this year. And frankly, it's just eaten up my free time. For about a good solid 4 months there, I had to kind of decide between I guess I could watch that movie, or I could go do freelance, or I could sleep. And I get to do 2 of those things at most. As a result, frankly, this project and other projects, I have other games on the back burner that are half done that I'm like, oh, I could release that. Nah, I don't got time. That has been my other big challenge on the year. So, if I look back at 2023, it's a year in which important milestones happened. But it's a year that I ultimately look back and realized that there was a bunch of things that I wanted to get done that just didn't happen. So, I'm not mad or upset about the year or anything like that, but I do wish that I would have gotten more done. Or had more time to get more things done, as the case may be. So, that was 2023 in a nutshell. I honestly think, for a year that had a pretty momentous thing, which was an actual print product for Wolfran's Fate became available, even if it was just POD. The first actual PDF released for folks to buy, and more parts getting released to all of you in kind of a more official capacity. I see all of that as kind of a win. but comparatively, I wanted to have the adventure done by now. And I'm still on writing part 3 and laying out part 2. I'm basically at the middle, and I want it to be done. So, what does that mean for 2024? Well, 2024 is unfortunately starting with a small challenge, but this is a challenge that is clearing out. And that is, I have a freelance project for Paizo that I am in the middle of. I can't tell you what, I can't even talk about it in any way, shape, or form, but I'm in the middle of writing a thing. And that means my time is currently monopolized because I'm on deadline. I'm past deadline. Don't tell anyone. I'm late. I should have had this done weeks ago. And I'm still not done. And I won't be done by the 1st. So that's a challenge for me. But it is meaning that currently that is where all of my spare time is going. So that's kind of how 2024 is starting. It's not ideal. But after that, that's it. I don't have any bigger freelance projects. I don't have any. I have to finish unpacking. I'm done. I don't have to do any more house searching. There isn't another OGL crisis. I'm going to cross my fingers on them and knock on some wood, just to make sure that doesn't happen. How does it work when I can do freelance for Paizo? I can freelance for anyone, including us. There are some legal things that we have to make sure we do. I generally can't do freelance work that is my main job. That's the real key. So if I do freelance work that is not my primary job, and believe it or not, my primary job is not writing content. I'm a creative director, right? I decide our creative direction. I don't write stuff. But usually we allow folks to freelance kind of freely. So anyway, neither here nor there. So basically what it boils down to is once, we get through this freelancing obstacle, my focus is pretty much Eventide. That's the only thing I have on my plate right now. Are there other things I'm excited to do? Sure. I have some other things in the hopper that I'm kind of close on that I think I'm going to try and tinker with. But Eventide's getting the lion's share of the attention here in the early part of the year. So what are the big things I want to get accomplished here? I'm going to be pretty granular on this because, frankly, I need to be. So Wolfram's Fate Part 2 needs to get to edit. That means I need to finish. I probably need to do one last polish pass on it. And I'm trying to decide, now that I say it out loud, I think I know what the decision is. I'm going to have to go in and change it to Orc, which means I'm going to have to go back and change Part 1. But I'll get Part 2 into edit first. So Part 2 is going to need a pass to change it to be Orc compatible and remaster compatible. That shouldn't be too onerous, believe it or not. I think I'm going to have to swap out one monster. And there's even a replacement that I'm aware of that if I time it right, it should be fine. And then on top of that, there's a few last sections that need a little bit of polish. There's no point in sending it to edit if I'm just going to have to change a bunch of it. That's right. Long live the Orc. So that's the first thing I want to do. Obviously, I want to get the playtesting for Part 3 back up and running and get it finished, which also means finish writing Part 3. I need to finish up the art order for Part 3. The art order is in process. I just never sent it out. And I need to finish up a few pieces for it. Finish up the descriptions for a few pieces. I don't do the art. I just describe what I want the art to look like. Then obviously once Part 2 gets back to me from edit, then it'll go into layout. Layout should be pretty quick because I already have the templates and guides and everything because I did Part 1. And then that means a draft of the finished Part 2 goes out to all of you. It is my hope that will happen sometime in the first kind of quarter of the year. After that, my attention turns to the getting Part 3 into paces, but frankly, I'll probably spend a bit of time working on the player's guide. Yeah, I'm not worried about the when it comes to shenanigans from WotC, I guess I'm not too worried about that anymore. I don't we're not using their license, right? That's the entire point of the arc. I don't have to care what WotC does. And with the new version or the revised version or whatever they're calling the new release of D&D this year, the totally compatible but better, but totally compatible version. I don't know how you walk that fine line. I had to do it with the remaster, and we decided on what our approach was, and it mirrored what we actually thought was going on. But yeah, the upside is we don't really have to care about what is happening at Wizards. That's the whole point. So, that's all on me. So then, frankly, my attention turns to getting the player's guide polished back up, and I actually want to get a draft out to all of you. Because I think that, frankly, you've held on long enough, and I shouldn't continue to be precious about it, even though it won't fully have art yet. You can have a draft without art. You're my patrons. You get to see it when it's still dirty, and not quite ready for prime time. But I'd prefer you all to have that content and be able to use it. Now, much of that content is already up on MinotaurGames.com. So it's basically just a handy way to reference that material. Now the GM's guide is going to be a little bit trickier because I'm still writing that beast, and I have like 2 half drafts of it from various stages of this project that I need to synthesize into one, but that's going to need to be turned into an orc document as well. And I think that's pretty easy because I think all it is updating some of the monsters and magic items, but still work that needs to be done. But all things considered, most of that GM's guide is just lore and world building stuff, which, aside from some references I need to scrub, I'm not too worried about it. The upside is some of the stuff that didn't make it was stuff I didn't really use in Eventide anyway. For example, the drow were never really a thing I wanted to focus on. First of all, they've always been a bit of a problematic trope, from their inception. But second, I honestly just kind of feel like they're overplayed. So there are a few things that I was using that I'm going to have to figure out how to not use anymore. For example, a bunch of the cities, a bunch of the dwarven cities are named after famous weapons. So there's a flame tongue and a frostbrand and stuff like that. I'm gonna have to change those, but that's okay. I can come up with cool weapon names. That's not gonna be a problem. I have a question from chat asking how am I going to move forward with playtesting, and am I still in part 2? No, I'm actually in part 3. Part 2 playtesting wrapped. Midsummer, late summer, I want to say, but. When I moved into part 3, that's when one of my groups fell apart. The other group carried on, but one of the groups fell apart like 2 or 3 sessions into part 3. So, yeah. And the other group only is like 1 or 2 sessions beyond that before the move and holidays and stuff completely torpedoed my ability to run games. So, yeah. So, the other group I'm just going to pick up and continue on with. And I'll play test with one group, right? I'm experienced enough in adventure design that I can do this. I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, they're on the journey. They're making their way from Wormbone out to Red Thistle on the Gem Road. So, yeah. So that's another big thing that happens in 2024. Is I want to kind of get the playtest. I mean, by all sense and purpose, I should be able to get the playtesting for the entire adventure done this year. If I can't, it means I haven't gained enough. So there is that. And that means the adventure will be done being written, mostly. It probably won't be all done and out to the public by the end of the year. But I am hoping, my big goal is to get the player's guide done this year. And get the GM's guide to the point where you all can see it this year. So those are my 2 kind of major goals this year. Now, I've talked about it, and I want to kind of talk about it a bit more. One of the things I'm looking to do in 2024 is retool the Patreon a bit. I have, it's been kind of stable for a while, but frankly, the way it's structured means that it doesn't really grow very effectively. People who come at it midway through are coming in the middle of a campaign where they're learning about stuff that they have to go back and watch backlog. And as a Patreon, it's really kind of odd to be focused on one particular project. I did this because I wanted to keep myself focused on a thing, but I am starting to think that the Patreon, in and of itself, needs to be kind of broader. I'll probably retool the tiering levels and bring down some of the prices, because I do want to make it kind of more open. I want there to be a tier where it's just like, yeah, you get lectures and seminars and access to my drafts and stuff like that, but that's it, right? There's no incentives, or you don't get free products at the end or anything like that. You still have to buy that stuff. But you just get to support the process and be a part of it. So right now, focused on this, everybody who's been with me this whole time, you're going to get the stuff you've been promised. No worries there. Nothing about any of the rewards or benefits that any of you have been promised is going to change. Some of those things might get sunset so that new folks can't get them as well. But that's kind of where we're at. Because what I really want to be able to do with the Patreon is just support all of my work and efforts. I think that'll make me happier, because it means if I get a really cool idea for a thing, I don't feel like it has to fight with Eventide. I can put Eventide aside for 2 weeks and work on this other thing and then share that all with you. And that's still fun and exciting, instead of feeling oddly guilty and then just doing it separately and then none of you get to see it. And I think as my patrons, you want that stuff anyway. I mean, I don't think there's an awful lot of people who are patrons here who are excited about Eventide who didn't pick up Hope Finder or didn't back the Hope Finder project. As a matter of fact, I know most of your names, so I know most of you did, by and large. So it seems to me to make sense that I should open this up. And that affords me some interesting opportunities, because if I can open this up and I can attract more people to it to just support me, generally making more game stuff, growing this will give me more funds to do bigger and bigger things. I think right now the amount of funding I have is allowing me to offset a lot of my art costs, meaning that when I sell 99 copies of Wolfram's Fate, I don't lose $2,000, which is where I'd be right now. For that thing to break even, I need to sell 500 copies, roughly. But with the Patreon, it can do what it can do right now. And that's fine. But looking broader, I want to be able to do bigger and broader things. That's not going to happen right away. I want to focus on Eventide and get some Eventide stuff out first before I look at doing kind of a rebrand. And obviously, I want your opinions and thoughts. So if that idea is terrible to you and you will leave if that happens, I want to know that. If you think that idea is exciting and you're looking forward to it, I want to know that too. But I do think that, thinking about it and looking at how other creatives use Patreon, I think it's probably wiser to me to focus on kind of broader, game creation, game design, game tinkering. So if I have a cool idea, I can just be excited to work on that and then bring it all to you, do a couple chats about it and give you the final product. Here you go. Right. I think that's more exciting, than kind of focusing on one project laser. And then, whenever I have to do something else, I have to kind of sneak it in on the side. It's weird sort of thing where, like, when I was working on Hope Finder, I actually felt like I was cheating on the Patreon. I was like, well, I want to do this because I'm really excited about it. And I wrote it in record time. I wrote that thing in 3 weeks. But I felt bad because it was like, oh, well, I should be spending this time on this other stuff. So, I do want to find myself in a spot where I'm just excited to do work, because I think that's better for me. And if it's better for me, it means I make more stuff. And if I'm making more stuff, that means more stuff for all of you. So, that's where I'm kind of at. Well, I appreciate that, folks. I see some support in the chat already. But for those of you who watch this later, just leave a comment in the video, or leave a comment back on the Patreon. I'll probably make a post about it on the Patreon at some point in time and ask everybody and get kind of some polling stuff. And like I said, this isn't going to be a thing I do right away. It'll probably, if it happens, it'll happen mid-year. I want to spend the first chunk of the year, frankly, focusing on getting some of this stuff out. I want to get part 2 of Eventide out. I want to get the player's guide out to you guys, you folks. And that's really all super important to me. So, yeah, that's kind of what I got in store for 2024. I will say this. Part of me retooling the Patreon to support all my games, all my efforts, means that the other game that I'm quietly working on the side and have been for like 2 years now, is something that I will share with all of you. I've been working on a really light storytelling kind of game, the sort of role-playing game where you sit down with your friends and you play one session, and that is the entire story experience. You don't come back on a different session and keep playing. You play one multi-hour event, and when you're done, you've told a complete story, and then if you come back to play it again, you start all over. And it doesn't use dice. It uses cards. It just uses a deck of cards to do the storytelling. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, getting anything up to Electrum is a big lift. I don't have very many Electrum products, I don't think. Boy, that's a good question. How many... Now that you got me curious, how many Electrum products do I even have? There. No, do not show me monthly subtotals. There we go. Gross sales by number. I have 2 products that are Electrum or higher. They're both the Hope Finder products. That's it. Nothing else is at 250. I have a bunch of silver stuff, but I have 1 Electrum, 1 gold, and a bunch of silvers. So, yeah. Suffice to say, it's hard to get anywhere on drive-thru. I do want to say this though. It's important to understand just how hard it can be to break into those upper levels at drive-thru. So, let me do the math here real quick. 27, 34, 38, 40. So of all the products on drive-thru, 60% of them never even sell 50 copies. 13% of them are copper, 14% are silver. So there are a lot of silvers selling 100 copies. But Electrum drops to 7%. Gold is 4%. Platinum is 1.7%. Mithril is 0.34%. And adamantine is 0.13%. It is 189 products total have sold more than 5,000 copies. So that's the challenge, right? The challenge is getting out of the lower echelons and getting up to the higher points is really hard to do. And that's part of the reason why I don't measure it as the only metric for success. Once I have everything out and I can kind of really promote the entire campaign, I'm not worried about it. If I do a Kickstarter where I'm selling a full print edition of Wolfram's Fate, I'm not going to have any trouble selling enough of those to break even. So that's kind of where we're at on that front. There is one other thing I wanted to show everybody tonight. Something I'm really excited about. So it's the holidays, and remember to give each other Christmas gifts. My partner got me something that I'm very excited about, and as my patrons, you get to be the first people to see it. I'm very excited about this. This is really very, very cool. I want to show it to all of you. So here it is. It's a sign. Oh, you can see my ring light in there. So yeah, it's a sign. It's an LED sign. I'm going to turn this on, and it's totally going to screw up my camera view here for a bit, but you can all see it. Here we go. As you can see, really messes with my green screen, but it's pretty cool. We'll go ahead and bring it back. So, very awesome, very thoughtful gift. I'm very appreciative of it. I may try and mount this somewhere in the back of my studio somewhere. I'm not sure. It's so bright, even on its, and that's on its lowest setting, that it may not be a thing I can ever have on during a stream, because it's too bright. But maybe if it's way in the back and far away from the camera, it might be okay. I don't know. I'm going to try and check it out here in the next couple days. But when I first got it and plugged it in, I didn't have batteries for the remote to dim it. And I was looking right at it when I turned it on, and nearly blinded myself. Good. For about half an hour, everything was kind of blue. So, yeah. So there's that. We got a sign. So, we're legit now. Minchar Games, very legit business now. It has a sign. Everybody knows when it's got a sign and business cards, you're fine. You're a business. And I have business cards around here somewhere, I think. I made a small stack of them at some point in time. Yeah, I totally nearly blinded myself. It was really bad there. For a little while, I was like, is this permanent? I hope this isn't permanent. What power is this LED light? As it turns out, it's very bright. Yeah, the dim down, it's tolerable. Dim down, it's tolerable. But it also has like strobe settings and stuff, which I'm like, that it's too much. So yeah, there you go, folks. So there we go. That's 2023 and 2024. I think 2023 had its ups and downs, and although it didn't have as many ups as I wanted, I still think we got some stuff done, and I will take those wins. But the things we left on the table leaves plenty of places to succeed in 2024. We've got parts of this adventure that are getting close to, entering their final steps. There is a player's guide that frankly just needs a development pass and some polish, and frankly probably needs to be relayed out. But then that'll be ready for at least patrons to get their teeth into. And we got a GM's guide that frankly is coming along. It's slow, but it's coming along. And, that's kind of my main package for Eventide. I want to get that stuff out, get it put out, and see how folks feel about it. If they like it, if they're really excited about it, I'll do more. If I get a cooler reception, we'll go. We tried. We'll see how it goes, and we'll pick at it. It's still something that I love. It's something that I, am excited to continue to build upon and grow. But we'll adjust plans accordingly. Unfortunately, all of this is a business, even though it's a business of fun. That is one of the things you got to kind of come to terms with, is that you can do things for passion, and passion will get you so far. But sometimes things just don't work out, and you got to decide to go in different directions. I'm not worried about it right now. Selling 99 copies when all you got is part one of a 4-part adventure out. I'm amazed 99 people gave me money for something that's only 1/4 done. So did you finish the insanely detailed map of Wormbone? No, but it did come along, actually. It's about half done now, I think. I'll have to dig it up. I haven't touched it since I moved, to be honest. The move threw such a monkey wrench into everything that I just, a bunch of things kind of fell off the map. I'm going to add that to my list. Oh, I need to do it because it needs to be done in part 2. Finish Wormbone map. Yeah, I need to do that because it's part of the Wolfrun's Fate Part 2, so that needs to be done. Thank you for the remember. I would have realized it when I went to do the map order and was like, oh yeah, that's not finished. So we'll get there. All right, folks. That's about all I got here today. I want to, thank you all for being with me this year. This year's been rough. It's been a tough year. But, I think we're going to get through it. And I'm excited to see where 2024 brings us. I want to thank you all for your continued support. Without all of you, none of this would happen. I just pick up more freelance, of which I already have too much of. But I'm excited for this. I hope you are as well. I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Take care of yourselves out there. We will see you in 2024. But until then, take care. We'll see you next time.